Hi folks, welcome to the Prepared Homestead. This is Travis. Thank you all for stopping by to watch. Oh, camera's out of adjustment here. Hold on a second. Oh, that's all shaky. Well, trying to get some of this compost spread around, but wanted to talk to you about our glorious leader in the White House. I know so many of you voted for him. I mean, most people that ever voted for a president ever. I mean, it's amazing the amount of popularity that Joe Biden has. It's because of all the amazing stuff that he does. I mean, he's the hardest working man in Washington. And just the other day, his spokesperson was saying how the economy is so much better now that when he took office, the economy was it was in the toilet, and prices were high and inflation was high, and he has worked really hard to make things better. And we should be proud of that we have been privileged enough to elect someone of his stature and alertness and knowledge as the president. He also did something today that many of you might find interesting. I have here an executive order, April 21st, 2023. It's the executive order to revitalize our nation's commitment to environmental justice for all. Basically, before I get into some of the meat and taters of this, and of course I'm not going to read it all, it's several pages long. I don't know, I didn't even look to see how many, 12 pages. 12 pages, so I'm not going to read it, of course. But this basically is setting the stage for social credit scores, or ESG scores, which are pretty much the same thing. Social credit scores, most of you are familiar, that's what they have in China, where you are ranked just like your credit score, but it's ranked based on what you do that's beneficial to the environment, or beneficial to the community, or the loyalty to the government or party, and then you get a higher number and you get more privileges. And if you have a lower number, you get less privileges, and you get fined, and you can't go places. You're confined to your neighborhood even. I saw a video the other day in China on the streets, and it's a billboard type of sign, except it's a TV screen, a big TV screen, I don't know, probably 10 foot wide. And it was scrolling through pictures, names, faces, and video of people that jaywalk, that didn't use the crosswalk, or that walked when the sign said don't walk. And it was putting their face and all their personal information and everything there. And then of course they get a fine automatically deducted out of their accounts. There are scanners at dumpsters and trash sites. And if you throw away too much garbage, you can be fined and you get a lower credit score. There's all kinds of things that would cause you to get a lower social credit score. Well, that's been going on here in America for a while under a thing called ESG, Environmental Social Governance. It's only been on a corporate level. And while it's voluntary, if you don't do it, then you don't get loans, or you get really poor rates at banks, or maybe you just don't get contracts with the government, whatever. There's all this kind of stuff. And what it is, if you're not woke enough, if you're not, and you can get on these websites. If you remember back the whole Tractor Supply thing, where they were supporting LGBTQ, drag queens, story hour, whatever it was. I don't remember, but it's something like that. If you go to Tractor Supply's website, and it's not unique with them, we're just picking on them. A lot of big corporate sites have this. They'll have a tab or a section on their website for their ESG, their environmental, social, and governance. And it's how much they give back to the community, how much they support environmental things, how much they support, woke agendas, like, trans things and gay day and all this kind of stuff. That's what they do. Because if they do that, then they get a higher ESG score, and then it's more profitable for them. They get better, loans, and they get better deals and corporate contracts and things like that. I'm sure that Budweiser ESG score is pretty high right now because, you know, they're doing all the right things according to the left. Well, Joe Biden signed an executive order, and I won't say that it's fully implementing the social credit score or ESG. They're really very much the same. I know that the semantics is different, but in the end, they're the same thing. I know this doesn't necessarily implement it for everyone, but it does start that process. It's mostly focused on government, but certainly it's going to affect everyone, and I think it's probably going to lead the way for this. Now, I have something else in this video that's not related to this, so stick with me, even if this one isn't that interesting. This is to deepen the Biden-Harris administration's whole of government commitment to environmental justice. I mean, their environmental justice is what it is, not just environment, their environmental justice. To create good paying clean energy jobs, lowering costs, meeting our climate goals, the Agenda 2030 climate goals, advancing environmental justice and conservation, strengthening communities, blah, 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 blah. Some of the bullet points on this, we'll read through those because I'm not going to read all of it. Better protect overburdened communities from pollution and environmental harms. Strengthen engagement with communities and mobilize federal agencies to confront existing and legal legacy barriers and injustices. To promote the latest science, data, and research, including on cumulative impacts. Expand interagency coordination and launch a new Office of Environmental Justice. Oh, we're creating a new office now within the White House Council on Environmental Quality. Because see, that's where it's going to come out of, the Office of Environmental Justice. That will probably lead to some kind of social credit score kind of system for everyone, because it does kind of allude to some kind of thing like that. So just follow with me. Increase accountability and transparency in federal environmental justice policies. Honor and build on the foundation of ongoing environmental justice work. Let's see. Just trying to hit the highlights here. Publish the first, here we go. This is where I was getting to. Publishing the first ever environmental justice scorecard. Oh yes. The Office of Management and Budget, the CEQ, and the U.S. Digital Services are publishing phase 1 of the Environmental Justice Scorecard. Kind of sounds like an ESG score, social credit score type of system. First government-wide assessment of federal agencies. Yes, I know it's only federal agencies, at least right now, but you know how government is. You give them an inch and they take, 100 miles. Let's see. The first version of the scorecard establishes a baseline for tracking the federal government's efforts through 24 agencies to secure environmental justice, including the Advance the Justice 40 initiative. Over time, it will show how the administration's actions are making meaningful changes in communities. The scorecard incorporates recommendations from the WHEJAC, I'm not sure what that is, I should have looked that up, but I didn't, and feedback from public environmental justice stakeholders. There's another word, World Economic Forum word for you, stakeholders, and experts. Another bullet point, launching the White House campaign for environmental justice, announcing new Justice 40 coverage programs, taking new steps to combat plastic pollution in the communities, delivering the Justice 40 initiative, making historic investments in environmental justice, advancing ambitious regulatory agency, strengthening enforcement of environmental laws. So we're going to do like we did with, the IRS and hire more agents. We're going to do that here. We're going to strengthen the environmental justice laws and the EPA and all that stuff. Increasing technical assistance and capacity building, respecting and elevating indigenous knowledges, strengthening our regulatory system for this 21st century. So strengthening the whole system. We got to make it bigger and better. This, I think, my opinion, I'm trying to tuck this piece of paper in here so it don't fly around out here. I think that this is probably the door being opened a little bit bigger for a social credit score and the environmental social justice system and all, and governments and all this kind of stuff. This is another way to manipulate and to control you, to take your property. You'll own nothing and be happy. Well, if you have a really bad scorecard and your score is really bad and you're just a bad, not woke, bad environmental person, well, then you get a low number and then you could lose things. Things could be taken away from you. You might roll your eyes and say, that's not possible. In America, we wouldn't do that. Maybe not right now, but it's happening in other countries, China particularly. And as much as we're trying to spin this thing that China's the big enemy now and we're going to go to war with them, which we will, really I think the real thing is that most of our government is in bed with China, and they know that America's failing, and they gotta play this little game out long enough to make it look like we're putting up a fight, so that China can actually kind of take over us. But they have to do this social credit score. This is like 1984 and Brave New World had a genetically modified and amplified love child. I mean, I don't know how else to put it. It's awful. And I assure you that it will be vastly changing. It's going to open the doors for the digital currency, because it really kind of has to happen to make it work right. Digital ID. There was a digital ID bill was introduced into the Senate in the last few days by, I can't remember the two senators, but one was an independent and one was a Republican. And so we're seeing actual Republicans support this concept of digital IDs. Even with the CBDC, only a few Republicans have really spoken out against CBDC. They disagree with the Democrats and the liberals on, the details of the CBDC, but you don't see a whole lot of people. I mean, you do see some, I'll admit it, but you don't need to see a whole lot of them saying that this is wrong, we must stop this. This is going to most likely happen. I can't see that it just stops miraculously, even if a different president gets elected. It will happen. It's happening more and more around the world. And we're going to see that. I was watching another video in China where this woman was traveling from her neighborhood into another neighborhood. And she had to go through these turnbuckles. It's, like what you see in a subway system or train, the little rotating thing. And it was all gated off. And she had to go up there and scan her card and took a picture of her face. It scanned her face and it came up on the screen, and she had to punch in things. And she was getting permission to go into the next neighborhood. That's it. That's all she was doing. She wasn't like leaving the country or going into a big government secure building. She was simply just riding her bicycle from her neighborhood to another neighborhood. If you want to move or transfer from one province in China to another, you have to get a passport and apply for all this stuff. It's like going to another country. That's the kind of world that they want to create here. If you don't believe me, just do some research and read into the stuff that they put out. It's in fact what they want to happen. And I hate to burst some people's bubbles. I'm not here to start a fight with anyone, but even Donald Trump has supported the concept of 15-minute cities. I'm not saying that he would support the full implementation of all the Big Brother stuff, but he has suggested that 15-minute cities are a good thing. Which, for those of you that don't know, that means that each neighborhood is built so that you can go to everything you need within 15 minutes, that you can walk or ride a bike, and everything you need, hospitals, doctors' offices, grocery stores, everything is within 15 minutes. That way you don't need a car anymore. That's eliminating vehicles. There are a few cities that are either fully or partially implementing some of these things here in the United States and around the world. And then you don't get to just leave that 15-minute city. You have to kind of get a pass, basically, to leave your neighborhood. And so the cities would be small 15-minute cities all put together into big cities. So there's been a lot of crazy dystopian movies that depict that, if you don't fully know what I'm talking about. Anyway, so I think that this is just another thing. All this stuff that goes on and we talk about it all the time, and many other YouTubers talk about it, it's overwhelming, all right? It just is. I mean, no one, I don't think anyone is capable of keeping track of every little thing all the time and not at some point feel this overwhelming sensation. Or it's just you're focused on this, and then there's this over here, oh, this is happening, oh, war, oh, dollar, oh, you know, BRICS, you know, pandemic, and it's just, it's all, you know, Hunter Biden and Donald Trump and DeSantis, you know, it's all the time. Something's always happening, and there's a reason for that, because it distracts us. It keeps us off of our game, right? We're not able to focus our attention. It's like warfare. You know, if you have the enemy just doing, you know, hitting at all these different areas, you're spread out, you're spread thin, it's difficult for you to mount a defense. And they know that, and so that's what's happening. It doesn't change the fact that these things are happening, and they're moving rapidly, and while we're distracted with this over here, this hand over here is, you know, doing something nefarious. And this social credit environmental justice scorecard thing that Joe Biden signed today is one of them. Another thing that's happening, and this is what I mentioned earlier that I was gonna bring up, the Democrats have submitted a bill in the Senate, I believe, and you know, we'll see how much pushback the Republicans give to it. I could actually see this one passing both houses and becoming law. But basically, it would alter border crossing law so that people that are crossing illegally, if they classify as one of these things that's listed in the law, then they would be considered a vulnerable person and would not be allowed to be detained. It would be illegal for them to be detained. And of course, the top of the list is LGBTQ, transgender, those kind of people. If those people cross the border, if they say, oh, I'm trans, then they cannot actually be detained. They have to be allowed into the country, and then, you know, they'll be given a court date or whatever down the road that they'll probably never show up to. But the fact is, they have to be allowed through the border. Also, it listed a few other things, and one of them just cracked me up. If you don't speak English, then you cannot be detained at the border because you're considered a vulnerable person. Now, if you speak English, they can detain you and determine at the border whether or not to allow you in. But if you don't speak English, then you're vulnerable, you know? So we should just allow you to come into the country. How many English speakers across the border? They are actively working to destroy this nation. I have said it for years, and I've heard so many people before me say this, that the far left, and they've been working actively at least since the 1960s in this country, probably before then, but since the 60s for certain. Before then, they were the Communist Party of America and all this kind of stuff, to destroy this country. That's what they want, and that's what they'll do. So we have to work out our own level of preparedness, how we're going to combat that, how we're going to defend ourselves and our homes and our tribe and our community against that. So that's why we get prepared. That's why we're self-sufficient. That's why we work to get to a level that, excuse me, that we are not heavily and highly dependent upon government and just the whole system around us. So when I say get your house in order, that's exactly what I mean. Before I get off of here, I do want to mention a friend of ours, very good friends of ours. They have a YouTube channel that I would encourage you to go over and watch, you know, subscribe. It's not prepping, it's not homesteading, it's not news, it's not fear this, fear that, it's nothing like that. It's actually the very opposite of all these things. It's very wholesome, it's very calming, it's very family oriented. What they do is they take old-timey radio shows back before probably most of your time when there wasn't TV and there was the old radio shows, and they take them and they put some visual images, you know, fireplaces burning, you know, pretty scenery, and they play those, but they do more than that. Beforehand, they give commentary of the history or cool data or trivia about that particular show, or maybe an actor that's in that show. It's kind of like the old AMC, if any of you ever remember that. I don't know if they still do that, but before they play an old movie, they would give a little trivia about it. Well, that's what this family does. They put out some really good content, and I'll tell you this, YouTube hates it. They have been demonetized 2 or 3 times. For no reasons. Every time they fight it and then they get it back. And YouTube will say that they violated some policy when in fact they didn't. They just recently demonetized them again. They tried to appeal, and YouTube said that they're done. They're not even considering an appeal anymore. It makes no sense other than the fact that these are Bible-believing, traditional, wholesome people with their wholesome traditional channel, and I think it's just attacking them. So anyways, it's Hearth and Home Nostalgia. I'll leave a link in the description below. Please go over there and at least just subscribe and watch them for a little bit. They do have a Patreon channel that you can sign up right now. They're demonetized. They not only demonetized them, but their most recent check that YouTube was going to send them, they cut that off too. So they basically backdated or retroactively demonetized them, which I don't know how they can even legally do that. But they're YouTube, they do it. You know, $1.5 trillion company, they can do what they want. Go over and give them a watch. They put out long content, like 6 hours. And the idea is that you can just have it playing in the background. Because the visual is just, you know, fireplaces, crackling, burning, or visual images. It's the audio is what you're doing. So you can just play it in the background while you're cooking, doing things. It works great for that. If you have elderly people, disabled people, it's really great to have that playing in the background. And so give them a watch. And if you would, maybe even sign up to their Patreon channel because they put even more content out there. Folks, get your houses in order. Start preparing yourselves mentally, physically, and spiritually. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.